All right, so of course then the question is, how do I get all those positive benefits, right? You have to learn the skills and tools, and that's what I'm going to share today, is what are the skills and tools you need to productively disagree. And I've taken, for the book, I interviewed over 40 experts, people from positive psychology, emotional intelligence, management science, some neuroscience folks, and I've taken that and condensed it down to a really straightforward approach. And that's what I'm going to share today. This is about really deconstructing conflict, taking the emotion out of it for the moment. Emotion's important, but taking the emotion out of it for the moment so that you can handle it in a depersonalized way. So I'm going to share some concepts and tools with you. The very first concept I want to share is that we all self-select into two types of conflict approaches. This is more of a spectrum. But on the one hand, we have conflict avoiders. And those are the people when things get tense. I see someone self-identifying here as a conflict avoider, right? When things get tense, that's the person who's trying to sort of slide under the table, trying to make sure everyone's okay, right? On the other hand is the conflict seeker. I'm a conflict seeker. It's why I wrote a book about conflict, right? I was the kid on the playground. As soon as kids started fighting, I just screamed, "Fight!" And went, I was like, the more people there, the better. Like, this is fun. Now, just by a show of hands, how many people identify or believe they are a conflict avoider? Oh, a lot of you. Okay, how many people think they're a conflict seeker? Oh, so few of you. How many think they're both? A little bit more. Okay, and that's the reality. We are seekers and avoiders in different environments, right? You might be a seeker with your co-educator. You might be an avoider with your boss, right? You might be a seeker with, someone who, threatens a certain value you find important, like fairness. But you might be a avoider with, say, your mom, right? In different situations, we adapt different styles. The key is to know what your default style is so that you can make a good choice. Because remember that stress response I talked about earlier? What happens in that stress response is there's a part of our brain called the amygdala that gets what Dan Goleman, who wrote Emotional Intelligence, he calls it amygdala hijack. And that's the thinking, rational part of our brain. So when we go into that stress response, we lose the ability to say, wow, I usually avoid conflict. Maybe that's why this is so uncomfortable for me, right? Instead, we're like, panic, panic, panic. How do I get out of here? What can I say to make this stop, right? Or what I often do is I go panic, panic, panic. Maybe if I yell my way out of this, like this will get better, right? Which does not work, by the way. So the key is to know where on that spectrum you fall. Now, how do you know what you are? You all pretty self-identified pretty quickly, but it's important to think about different scenarios you've been in. Think about conflict you've had with family members, with coworkers, with people who have authority over you, people who you have authority over. What has been your reaction? How have you handled that situation, right? And think through, okay, in this type of scenario, I usually do this. In this type of scenario, it's a really helpful reflection to do because it's going to help you make a rational decision about how to proceed. And we'll talk a little bit about those different options.